here, guys. Fix one quick thing with my audio here. All right, let me test this back out. Here we go. Let's see if we got audio. All right, we're good to go. Cool. It's had a little bit of a hiccup there. Quickly fixed that. We're good. Welcome. We're going to be back at it again tonight. Just continuing where we've been going with this topic about what the church could be. But just want to say once again, you guys jumping in. I see you in the chat. Welcome. Good to see you, Nadia. Good to see you, Shonda. Good to see you, Sister Pamela. Good to see you, Sister Mary. Thank you guys for jumping on. As always, it's good to see you guys and good to be able to connect with you live. Is what it is. So glad to let people come on in. We'll get started with prayer though and get right into what it is. Real quick before I pray though, to my guys, my fellas out there. Of course, we have started our men's group called Men of Integrity. You guys are going to be really empowered as guys if we'll come together. And I think it's March 25th, meeting at the YMCA in Harlem right there. 9 a.m. We're going to do breakfast. I'm going to do some vision casting, what this is all about, what Men of Integrity is all about. It is going to completely change your concept of how to just navigate life in general is what it is. So we're going to have some real candid conversations. It's just for the guys. We're going to have some breakfast. We're going to let the guys talk, let you guys ask questions, whatever you do. But go ahead and register, guys, because space is limited for this first event. If we need a bigger venue, we will get one if we max out. And then, but if not, hey, we're going to come together and we're going to grow as a group of men that is going to radically just change things and change our lives. So enough of the plug right there. Let's go in prayer and get this started. Heavenly Father, we come before you. We thank you for tonight's message. We thank you for each and every person that this message impacts now, 5 years down the road, whatever it may do. There is no time or distance in what is being done in your word and your spirit's capability of operating through these moments. We open our eyes, ears, and hearts to receive what you're saying. We thank you. Our heart is overflowing with your goodness and love that revitalize us today. Father, I need you to order my steps, articulate my words. As always, may it be a revelation from you that points people back to you ultimately. May it be an on-time word that brings clarity and hope in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we got some people jumping on. Okay, let's go. So, as we've been talking about, we're talking about what the church could be. And that's really what Thursday night is all about. It's about us taking a new approach of what is church and what is not church. I believe in church. I believe in the power of church. I believe in what we're doing in church. Of course, I'm a senior pastor of this very church. I believe in its power, but I also can at the same time acknowledge the issues with church. It would be, I would not have a good marriage, especially like, let's say 10 years from now, if I didn't acknowledge the fact there was problems in my marriage. You got problems in your marriage. If you don't have problems in your marriage, I question how long you're going to stay married, because that means you're walking around thinking there is no problems. Meaning there's always room to grow. There's always things to work on. There's always things to challenge. A good marriage doesn't come by turning a blind eye to all the real issues out there. And I mean the real issues inside your marriage. It comes from challenging each other. And when I challenge my own marriage, when I challenge myself, it doesn't mean that I don't think my marriage is not the will of God. It's that I don't think, I don't arrive at this place where I don't believe, man, my marriage isn't still good or has a purpose or is relevant. But I do acknowledge it's flawed because we have flawed people. And that's kind of my attitude. It may not be a perfect analogy, but that's kind of my attitude of when I say what the church could be. And so it's not throwing out church, but it is challenging church to be better and to do better and to acknowledge the flaws and where we get off out of whack and we get lost in crazy institution religion and lose the essence of spirituality and God. So tonight's another look at this. So let's get right into this. I don't keep you guys long on Thursday nights. It's just meant to be like 30, 35 minutes. Is all it's supposed to be, and we're just gonna stop where we pick up next week, as you guys know. On Thursday nights, just a reminder to everybody too, you get me live most of the time. I'm committing to a minimum every other week, but then we also rebroadcast Sunday. The reason we do that is because we don't stream Sundays live. So we want people to get a chance and opportunity to see that message, go back and hear that message, get it out there. Sometimes I'll come on in between that, but it's kind of an alternation right now till we grow into some more things with our church, as we have been continuously growing each and every week, and we're happy about that. So just give everybody kind of a heads up what's going on. So let's get into this. Tonight, I'm going to talk about faith. We're going to approach faith from a different perspective. The church has had this ongoing crazy relationship and attitude when it comes to faith. So if you're giving a subtitle, what is it talking about? I'm going to talk about the perversion of faith. Now, when I first start this out, it's going to be a lot of definitions because I need to insert to make sure we're all on the same page, some vocabulary before I get, so you know when I say something, you know what I mean when I say it. That way we don't get lost. So I'm going to insert some definitions about where faith has been hijacked, faith has been perverted, faith has been weaponized, faith has been void of the love of God, and what actually has happened, faith is no longer faith. Faith is a lot of pride, a lot of fear, and actually a lot of self-centeredness and really just arrogance that's masquerading as faith. The biggest thing the church has when you say we've really fallen away from faith in one regard is we've actually confused it with a lot of arrogance is what's happened. And if we can't recognize that difference, we're going to continue to operate in a dysfunction, perverted version of faith that's been hijacked in my camera right there twitching for a second, so I apologize about that. Let me keep moving here. So let's start with the thing. Let's just start out perversion. What's the real definition of perversion? The Webster Dictionary going over there says the alteration of something from its original course, meaning or state to a meaning or a state to a distortion or corruption of what was first intended. I'm going to read that one more time. Perversion, the definition, the alteration of something from its original course, meaning, or state to a distortion of corruption of what was first intended. That definition is spot on when I talk about what the church could be. Overall, the church and its idea of it, in the institution of it, I don't think that's what Jesus meant when it says, I'm going to build my church on you, Peter, for example, or what Paul was going for was the church we see today. It's been altered. Faith has been altered from its original intent. Now, for the purposes, what's one of the confusing things? Well, we throw faith loosely around, not understanding its application. And the application is not one-dimensional. Sometimes it's faith for things, faith in something, or then the Bible talks about the faith. And tonight, what I'm really talking about is what we're mostly exposed to is talking about the faith. And what do I mean by the faith? The faith of I'm a Christ-believing, Jesus confessing, tongue-talking, all this other stuff. And we give our description of what our faith is from an identity standpoint. And there's a lot of flaws in it. There's a lot of issues in it. But we don't realize it affects everything we do. It affects our shape of the world, how we see the world. It affects our view on humanity. And typically it gets turned into a lot of perverted things. And really faith ultimately is, if you want to define what do I want to identify as? It's hard to identify as a Christian. Well, people are persecuting Christians. Well, part of it, Christians act crazy. The faith is deemed as almost to a point gets mixed in with a cult view, with a terroristic view, with nationalism. I'm going to talk about that. And all these different things it gets weaponized as. And now the faith, actually, the reason people cringe at it is it's almost like, are you going to hurt me with the faith? And so we want to stay out of the war type of the faith is what we want to do. Yeah, it's okay to identify it, but that's not the most important thing. Really, when I say the faith, I hope people hear it's an empathetic person, a person that is pushing for dignity, respect, and honor and equality for all humanity, that receives a loving God who is love, unconditional, non-transactional God is what we want to receive. And we want to project that. So Let, so it's been altered when we talk about the faith. What has it been brought into? So let me keep reading. One of the first things that the faith has actually been hijacked and perverted into is nationalism. Now, I went and looked up some of these words because I'm like, let me make sure I'm saying some things correctly. But some people don't even know what nationalism is when I throw that out. I didn't when I first heard it. I had to go look it up. So I'm thinking, well, if I didn't, maybe some other people did not either. One thing about nationalism, it is deemed pretty much a political term. I mean, nationalism, what is our nation? Now, our nation, where we're talking, is the United States of America. Nationalism may be different depending on where you live. So, nationalism can be determined a little differently based on where you live. But it's what country, what state, what government you are associated with. In our case, United States of America. And so, what has happened with our gospel and what happens when people's fear and people's self-centeredness get involved, they tend to hijack God and hijack spirituality and co-opt it to fit their government, to fit their nationalism, to fit their United States of America in our case. And most days, what we don't realize, we get a very United States of America Jesus. We get a very United States of America gospel. And that's what we mean by nationalism. But nationalism is not a good word, actually. And the first thing that people jump up because they're so steeped in nationalism is saying, well, you're not being patriotic. You're not you're not proud of your country. And then they start telling people, well, you can go back where you came from, and start saying all this hateful rhetoric that flows from that. And this is the church talking about this. And I'm like, but actuality is, listen, God in the government was way before the United States of America was even a thought. And God is not American. God is not American, Russian, Chinese, or any of those things. Not when it comes to the nation, not so when it comes to the institution. The nations have changed over the times of history. We have seen that happen over and over. When one nation conquers the other nation, somebody comes in and takes over another nation, it fluctuates and changes. And technically, the gospel originated from a Middle East gospel. It's where Israel is. We got a Middle East gospel. We got more of an African gospel. That don't make people happy sometimes when you say that. Where do you think Egypt is? Geographically, so to associate everything with this crazy Americanized gospel, which is what we get because that's all we've known, that's all that's been handed to us, we call that the faith. And when we don't understand that, all of a sudden, when we talk about the faith, remember I'm talking about I identify as a Christian. I identify as what I believe. I identify when it doesn't match the Americanized version of that, all of a sudden now you are not a part of the faith. Not realizing, listen, I love my country. I love being an American. I love all those things. But that is always subject to my real faith first. And so it's not throwing out the flag, burning up all this stuff, but it's putting it back in its proper place. And it's getting it where this Americanized gospel is perverted. It's perverted our faith. And people see that it doesn't fit well and it doesn't work. It corrupts the word. It corrupts what God is doing. It corrupts the spirit. It corrupts us is what it does. Remember, perversion, what are we talking about? The alteration of something from its original course, meaning or state to a distortion or corruption of what it's first intended. Well, if we're receiving a corruption of the gospel, we're receiving a corrupted Jesus, a nationalism. All of a sudden, what does that happen? It corrupts us. And it's not pointing out there's a bad guy, there's villains or anything. I'm just telling you what we're getting, and we're trying to aim for better understanding, rightly dividing the word. We talk about that. Rightly dividing the living word, actually. And we have to remove the filters of an Americanized gospel and recognize that. Now, I'm probably not going to get too far into this. This is going to probably turn into those part A, part B kind of situations. And I can already tell because there's more notes than I got because I'm having to just do a lot of foundational. This is my very first time preaching this. Not exactly this exact outline that I'm going by right now. So I'm just digging. And it's always a slow grind when you first start one of these. Just making sure we're all following along. So nationalism, what is that? Loyalty and devotion to a nation. I'm reading the definition right now. A sense of national consciousness, exalting one nation above all others and placing primary emphasis on promotion of its culture, its interests, as opposed to those of other nations or groups. Man, that sounds like the problem we're dealing with in church right now. See, right now, the church is more than promoting empathy, promoting understanding, promoting all are accepted, promoting all backgrounds, all walks, all people, unconditional God, is so busy promoting being hijacked, being co-opted with the government right now to produce a powerhouse, is what it's wanting to do. To produce, I'm reading my notes when I look down, guys. It's promoting its own cultures and its own interest and exalting itself above others. That's why it's like, man, we all of a sudden we see another culture try to come in, another religion trying to come in, another group of people trying to come in that don't fit the Americanized version. All of a sudden we got to stamp that out because we have to stay on top. And the church is steeped in that. So when you hear the faith, see, my problem is when we're talking about right now, we got all these faith defenders and faith fighters, and they use all the war terms and attach them to the faith. We got to stand for our faith. This nation's going to hell, because we're not protecting the faith. This is the problem when they say the faith. And there's blindness. It's not trying to hate them, forget them, but it's that blindness. I come from some of this. I used to be subscribed to some of this in my early Christian years. And what happened? There was something on the inside of me, which was the Spirit of God, which was empathy, which was my world got bigger, which was humanity and interacting with humanity. I was like, I don't know, this version of gospel doesn't fit. This version of the faith doesn't work for me because all of a sudden the faith is turning me to Jill down the road who happens to be a Muslim. The faith is making me want to hate Frank down the road who's married to Bob. The faith makes me want to say, man, if you're from a different nation and you don't immediately comply to the culture of this country, now you're an enemy and you should go back where you come from. Every time the faith would violate the love nature on the inside of me till it got to a point I had to say, well, either I'm going to go towards the faith in this nationalism or and keep violating all the people I love and care about because my world kept getting bigger and bigger, or either I'm going to be like, this is wrong. And the latter, thank God, happened. And I've been slowly on this journey progressing further away from the faith that is drenched in nationalism. Now, this is one. I'm going to talk about some other areas it's drenched in. So we have to be mindful when we hear the faith. What have I picked up more of a nationalism gospel than I have the pure gospel? And I'm careful because we're going to get some things about faith because I'll get into it. I'm going to just take this one piece at a time. There's a lot of layers when I'm talking about faith. We're just emphasizing nationalism at the moment. So we have to understand right now, this is hijacking our politics. This is hijacking state laws right now. There's literally state laws that are literally targeting the dehumanization of certain people and groups right now, all in the name of church. And some of my partner churches I know, people I used to follow, people I still love, but am sorely disappointed in, are literally doing campaigns around in the nation under the guise of the faith and protecting the faith. And it's blindness. It's total blindness. It's this thinking we're pursuing God, but it is so anti-Christ. It is insane because every bit of it says, you know what? God is good long as you're on my side. But when you're not, you're my enemy and you are the evil them. And to hell with you since you won't pick my version of God and my version of Jesus and my version of the faith. But all those silent parts that are not talked out loud because it gets presented as fear mongering to members, to partners, to of entities, to our very own church at times it gets presented to, man, we got to rally around and protect the faith is what we got to do. Not saying underneath is, hey, we're actually what we're calling the faith is all the little the fine print below it. And the fine print's where it gets nasty. The fine print where is to hell with them. The fine print starts to go with turn or burn. The fine print says you comply. The fine print says let's stamp out the sin. Let's stamp out this group. Let's make sure there's no other threats around us. Because when you enter in the faith mode, everybody that's not on your side is a threat to you. And that's what the church is. And it's just like, pew, 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 let's get all the bad guys, pew, 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 you know, that whole thing. And it's like, that's not what we're after, guys. And we have to wake up to that. And not to hate the group that is doing that, but to also be different. To be the real salt of the earth, to be the real light of the world. Because all that is literally drenched in fear, self-centeredness, and hatred. And we have to stay out of that or come out of it because all of us have residue, including myself. I find residue of that junk on me because I was born in it. I breathed it. I lived it. It was all I ever knew till the light hit me. And I was like, this is violating everything I know in me with the love of God. And it perverted the faith. So we talked about nationalism. I think we've hammered some of that. There may be more details we'll get into next time. The next thing we get into is cultism. Another word, you'll look up cultism, and it was really loose because everybody's like, anything that doesn't line up with my version of God all of a sudden is a cult. And that word has been tossed around, weaponized. Whenever you don't like somebody, a group, you get mad at them, you call them a cult. It's just like a trigger word now. And I'm like, I'm so frustrated with that because it keeps eroding our vocabulary in our nation right now, where words become hijacked, weaponized, misused, abused, all these things to the point nobody knows what anybody's talking about. You know, a word is, I'm going to say this wrong, but spurious. When you look up the word cultism, they're going to say, look at the word spurious. And what spurious is, it is more, I'm going to read the definition to you because it's actually more accurate to define what cult and cultism is. It says an outwardly similar or corresponding to something without having its genuine qualities. It's a false. Another thing is a sub-definition of spurious or cultism, of falsified or erroneously attributed origin. Here's another one, a deceitful nature or quality. It's basically claiming it's something it's not. And there's a lot of that, especially when you start getting to nationalism, that turns into cultism. We've seen that. We've seen the outrage of political violence. That is cultism, actually, in its true definition, because it's presenting a falseness of spirituality. It's presenting a false God. Now, when you cultism, you want to be like, oh, man, those evil people. There is an evil element to it. Let me not diminish that. Let me not diminish the fact that we do need to do things to protect people. We do need to do things when violence is literal physical harm and violence is being exercised against another group. We need to do things to protect that because we live in a broken world. We need laws that are passed. We need legal things. We need ramifications for that. So everything I'm saying is not saying, oh, well, we just need to walk in love and don't do any things. We need to walk in love. We need to walk in love for our own selves. We need to walk in love for our own souls and our hearts, and to make sure that we don't carry this on the inside of us. But at the same time, we also need, Jesus was never passive towards injustice either. And so we're seeing this form of church that is really more trenched in cultism. I've seen this so many times. And the problem is because it comes under the guise of the faith. Every religion, including our religion, has a cult fraction to it. Because every religion can be hijacked by cultism. In America, because we're under a nationalism God, we just say, well, it's the people that did 9/11. We say it's the Muslim. We say it's the Middle Eastern people, and we look at them. But here's the thing. Being a Muslim is not being a part of a cult. It can become a cult, and we see the extremists, we see terrorism, we see actual things like that. But being an actual Muslim is, and a true Muslim is not cultism, is not anti-God. There are certain Muslims I know that have a better understanding of God and Jesus in humanity than I do Christians. And they know God actually better than some Christians. So it's our nationalism gets away and hijacks the faith right there, but turns a blind eye every time we have a cultism. And we do in the church right now. We have a stream of it. It's something I constantly have to watch as a pastor to make sure it doesn't rise up in our own church. Because anytime someone hijacks the faith, hijacks God for their own selfishness, remember, deceitfulness is attached to this, corruption perverts God, it will turn into a cult. And that is the danger of that. Now, it's not to make you afraid, it's to make you aware of those things. When we start talking the faith, to recognize what is actually us pursuing the faith, man, we're always going to arrive at the destination. God is love, and that love is unconditional. That love is pouring, not just available to all, but is extended to all, is active towards all, and is unconditional in every way. And here we are, we're going to move in that way. We're going to move in compassion. We're going to move in empathy. We're going to move in aid and mercy and all those things. That's when, if we are going to use that term, which I'm being very cautious to even not use it anymore because it's been so warped and hijacked. If we are going to call ourselves the faith, if we are going to call ourselves Christians, if we are going to call ourselves the gospel, we need to recapture the definition, because it has been perverted, it has been corrupted, it has gone outside of its original intent in its origin, and it does have an element of deceitfulness to it that draws people away from really who God is. The fact that I am seeing so much political violence exercised by the church concerns me, because that is nationalism, that is cultism right there. And it's still the faith is what it's called, and that's not the real faith. So we're trying to shift off. This is all about what the church could be. But if all you've seen, and that was my issue, all I saw was that version of the faith, you can be lost to it. And you're thinking you're serving God. You're thinking you're moving towards God. But this thing rises up in you. Well, it's like, man, I love going over to Jill's house, and celebrating her holidays, even though she's Muslim, and even though she doesn't exactly see things the way as she's the sweetest and kindest person. Our kids play together, they go to school together, but according to the faith, she's an enemy. So either I hate her, or either I'm always trying to win her over to my side because she's going to hell and she's this evil person. That's where the faith brings us to. Or the faith is like, man, Frank and Bob did such a good job at, man, we used them to be our, and this is actually some things that happened in my own personal life. We actually used them to, do our wedding and all these other stuff. And man, they did such a great job with it, man. And gave us and blessed us with this great price and everything. But according to my God, because they're gay, it's like we got to light them on fire, and I got to hate them and stay away from them, or it's going to rub off on me or some kind of craziness, because I got to make sure I keep with the faith. It's insanity when you start saying some of this out loud. But this is actively happening every day right now in our nation. And there are people being oppressed, being harmed. There's people that's probably listening to this, or I hope will listen to this later. You are some of the very people being targeted right now. And I have to point this out sometimes, where it's like, you're not crazy. This is not God here. And that was something that always concerned me about our church when I heard all the faith talk coming. The people they were calling out, I literally pastor. Some of the very people they were telling to go back home come to our church every week. Some of the very people they were wanting to build the wall around, and I know that's like, you're a little too close, literally come to my church, and I know their families, and I know their kids, and I know this. And that's problematic for me. And as a pastor, you kind of have to help people navigate that, because in one regard, it's not maybe we 100% directed at me, but it is in my proximity directed at me. And you got people walking around hurt, people walking around confused, people walking around wondering if what's really God and what's really not God at times. Um, we have people from the LGBTQ IA plus in our church right now. We have members, and some people are like, I ain't coming to your church. I hope you'll change your mind, but it's just at the end of the day, it's like I cannot go in this weaponized gospel. I cannot go with this turn or burn message. I cannot go with the faith, kind of thing where we literally are targeting people with things. So this is what we got to come out of. This is what we want to come out of, is what we want to do. And this one we want to make sure we safeguard, not in a weaponized way, but we safeguard right here with the mentality and culture of our church. Because everything as a pastor, the other reason I want to talk this is I want to make it really clear. People are like, what's the vision of our church? These are some of the rawest moments I'm able to declare the vision and the purpose of our church. That when we interact with our community, this is the mindset. This is the attitude. That's the reason I'm harping on this. And not harping on this, I'm going over it a lot, and I get a little passionate about it too, I know. But it's like, you're going over this, you're going over this, you're going over this, because we have to always be in that position, that one person that's coming in the door, ready to be for them, and not co-opt them into this perverted faith. And so let's keep moving on. We talked about the cultism side of it, and then it leads to tribalism. Now, tribalism in this context, there's nothing wrong, because people get, especially America, you're like, oh, this tribe over here is demonic, this tribe over there. No, it's once again that tribalism that gets created inside of church, where if you don't match our tribe, you're our enemy. And I'm really saying the same thing with these three definitions to lead up to my other part, whereas is a weaponized, where, tribalism is a conscious and loyalty, exaltation of the tribe above other groups. Let me read that again. Tribal, and I'm more talking about in a negative context, okay? Just because you see a tribe in a different nation or country, that is not what I'm talking about. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people call it the village mentality or whatever it is. People pull together as a community. Tribalism in a community sense, that is built on compassion, built on empathy, built on helping others, built on building others up, and actually building a society together that is not weaponized to hate other groups. That's okay. And there is nothing wrong with that. That is good. There is even God inside of that. What I'm talking about is a negative, fear-driven, self-centered form of tribalism that turns everybody that's not a part of my tribe as an enemy, which is why I'm reading consciousness and loyalty, especially exaltation of the tribe above other groups. Let me say this again. Exaltation of the tribe above other groups. You hear the constant thing when the faith is meant to go out and dominate people, is meant to terrorize people, is meant to be weaponized and hurt people, all in the name of God. That's what I'm trying to get us, we're disconnecting from. And so here's the simple thing of weaponize. I'm about done with the definitions, and I'm about done with time. So there's a whole nother section I want to get to. So this is going to be a part A, part B. I appreciate you guys coming out here on Thursday night. When I say virtually coming out here, it's so awesome to see people in this picking up traction on Thursday night. So this is going to keep getting better and better. But you guys are going to hear the rawest things I teach. And on Thursday, you guys are going to get the rawest thing coming out, the most unfiltered, I don't know if I'd publicly put this on every platform to be consumed kind of deal, but I want to interact in that raw way. So weaponize simply means to adapt for the use as a weapon of war. And this is kind of where I lead to what happens. This question I pose: what happens when you hear everything from this perverted gospel I just presented to you, this perverted Jesus, this perverted God narrative or faith. Well, what happens is it becomes the filter we view everything through. In the church is caught in this constant war. I mean, we see the history of it, the holy wars. That was demonic as all get out. You become a part of Christ, or either we literally behead you. The concern I say in this, and people hear this two ways, and I'm going to be very clear which side I'm actually talking about. People, when is God no longer going to be a choice? People think when I say that, they think, oh, well, they're going to take our ability to be Christians in this nation. That is not what's happening at all. What is happening is God in Christianity is being forced on everybody. And that is anti-God. You live the way I live or go to jail is our terms right now. There is literally moral, and I'm talking about protecting people from violence. I'm not talking about protecting people from those things like that. I'm talking about there's literally a morality. It's like, I'm gonna say this, and it's just going. You guys know me well enough, and either at this time as a pastor, either you love me for what's coming out, or you hate me. But either way, I hope you're hearing it. You know, being gay never hurt anybody, and it's hard to say. And I used to not ever be okay with that, to even say that myself. I had to come from a background of a lot of homophobia. And homophobia is you're afraid of it ultimately, but that fear turns into hate and weaponization. Listen, I'm not here to go around telling everybody, listen, you can't marry who you want to marry, you can't do what you want to do, because here's the difference in that. You may say, I don't like it, I don't support it, it's sin. You may say all that stuff, and in this moment right now, for the sake of just trying to get us past first base for the conversation, I'm not going to sit there and argue with you. But being gay never killed anybody. Being gay never went out there and shot somebody up. Being gay does not cause me to die. Being part of the gay community is not going out, and they're not terrorizing people. But there's other issues that we ignore each and every day in hate groups, and the church has been actively a part of it. I've never had a gay person come in and shoot up my church. I have had a Christian go into a gay nightclub and murder all of them. That's the real problem. But yet we continue this campaign of murder all the gay people we can in the name of God, because we got to get rid of the sin and stamp out the people. And we do it through legislation right now and violence in our nation, legislative political violence. And the church is the one that's hijacked a political party right now to weaponize everything to do their bidding. And it continuously dehumanizes people, and we do it all under the guise of the faith. And the guise of is, when I say that under the guise, people, it's an idiom, and just going through all these definitions, it's by saying or acting as if something is other than what it really is. We're saying we're doing this to promote godliness, but that's not what we're doing. We're doing it under the guise of saying, we want a godly nation under God. No, you don't. Because if your version of God means to injure, to weaponize, to hurt other people, to murder other people, and that is happening, then that's not real faith. That is not godliness. Jesus never did any of that. What happened when we saw Jesus? They were like, Jesus, we went to this town, the Samaritan town. They didn't want us to stay in the hotel. Should we call down fire and burn them up just like the prophet did? And just like, you don't know what spirit you're of. That's crazy. That is crazy talk. And that's my issue with it. And so the faith has been lost in all that darkness is what's happened. And so we've got to reset, what does it mean by we're operating under the faith? And for a while, honestly, I'm going to talk about that term, but I'm not going to say I'm a part of the faith a lot of times, because it just shuts doors. People don't even hear it. It's like you can't even say you're a Christian, because people hear Christian and they hear all the demonically driven, anti-dehumanizing acts that are going on right now. in the political violence, in the all the tribalism, all the nationalism, all the cultism that comes out, and it is there. That is not unwarranted backlash. And so we have to get off that kick. Man, if the faith means you're constantly violating the very essence and nature of love, it's not real the faith. It is just perverted faith, is all it is. And so tonight we're just going through. I'm going to wrap it up right here because I had to pause. I'm out of time. I went 40 minutes, guys. Told you I'm not going to keep you long. I got part B. I got a whole nother page of notes here to tie right into this thing. Just need to get that vocabulary out so we can start getting our understanding better and recognizing what is really the faith of God. When I'm talking about in identifying faith, not faith for things, not trusting God for things. That's a whole different context in the Bible. When I'm trusting God for things. But when I'm talking about the faith, this is how I identify. This is who I am. This is what I'm a part of. We've got to redefine that. We've got to learn how to demonstrate that differently. But then also some people are going to hear, oh, I'm not crazy for how I believe. Because some things I'm saying the quiet part out loud. And I'm saying the things that you always knew was true. There's twofold here that's happening. There's the wake-up call, and then there's the, man, I always knew it was that way. I always knew something on the inside of me told me that was wrong and this was right. Because that's what was happening to me. I was like, I can't, this just doesn't feel right. This violates my peace. This violates my spirit. This violates my heart. This violates my love. Because I see people. But yet I'm being told this is God and I have to hate this person. I have to hate the sin. I have to be anti them or try to win them over all the time or try to change them or try to control things or get in this political fight and getting this and that and weaponize all this stuff. Man, that's not the faith. That is perverted faith. And that's what I want you to experience, the relief to just, man, be free to express genuine, authentic, unconditional, godly love to people. Because God is bigger than we ever thought. And his love is so much better than we ever thought. And I'm going to get into some of those things when I talk about faith, because I'm going to touch on some ugly stuff next week that's like, hey, we're going to deal with Romans 10:9. We're going to deal with John 14:6. I'll let you do your own homework in your own time. But we got this set up. Thank you guys so much for joining tonight. Like this, share this. If you haven't subscribed, get the word out. Let people know about it. We're just going to continue to grow in what the church could be. Man, I am so privileged and honored to be able to pastor this church, to pastor each and every one of you. And it's just so good to connect. We got people joining in. I see you guys on the West Coast. Thank you guys for jumping in. We get people that tune in from different countries, all the way in the Southeast, my hometown, Georgia. In Florida, we got people tuning in from there. Man, thank you guys for joining. It's such an honor and privilege to pastor this church, man. We love you guys. Nicole and I do so much, and we believe in you guys so much. We believe in this church and everything, not that it could be, that it is. But we know we got a lot more growth to do, a lot more work to do. But man, in the midst of an upside down world and an upside down church, we're going to be the difference. And that difference is going to be an unusual, miraculous love of God like never before. All right, guys, all I got for you. Love you all. Have a great night. Of course, Saturday, 6 p.m., we're going to pick this up. And then Sunday at 4, we got in-person service. I'll see you there, guys.